Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you're all keeping cool wherever you are today in the world. I'm Paul Stevens, editor of Short-Term Rentals, and welcome to this Rockstars 5.0 webinar on reducing pain points for property managers, sponsored by Flywire and NoiseAware. This is me, Paul Stevens, the host for today's session. And now for a short video from one of our Rockstars sponsors, NoiseAware, a privacy-safe smart noise monitoring solution for short-term rental property managers and owners.
What do property damages, angry neighbors, and sound ordinance violations have in common? They all begin with a noisy guest at your property. That could have been resolved with NoiseAware. Through quick installation and 24-hour monitoring, NoiseAware is an essential tool that monitors noise levels on your property to help protect your profits and peace of mind. NoiseAware. Rest easy.
So in terms of webinar guidelines for today, please keep your sound on mute and your camera off if you're not speaking. I'm being ably assisted by my colleagues Joe, Danny and Floor today. All of the details you can find in the chat, so please do post any questions you have there throughout the session as well. And a recording will also be sent around after today's session. And now we have one more short video from our second Rockstars series sponsor. This is global payments enablement and software company Flywire.
Flywire helps travel businesses reduce costs and improve guest experience when collecting payments. Without Flywire, travel payments can be costly and inefficient, requiring the business to work with multiple vendors like payment processors, merchant banks, and more. The process results in difficult manual reconciliation, high fees on both sides of the transaction, and no dedicated support for payers or merchants. We solve these pain points through our Flywire Advantage, the combination of our next-gen payment platform, our proprietary global payment network, and our travel-specific software, backed by our deep industry expertise, to improve both sides of the payment equation. Guests pay in their local currency and with their preferred payment method, whether it be credit card, local bank transfer, mobile wallets, or other local payment methods. Flywire leverages our significant scale to ensure travel businesses and guests alike enjoy low fees and competitive exchange rates. Businesses receive the exact amount that they bill in the currency of their choice for both domestic and international payments, all reconciled to the penny. If there are any questions along the way, Flywire's around-the-clock multilingual support and dedicated account managers are there to help. To learn more, visit travel.flywire.com and request a demo today.
So let me continue by introducing our Rockstars lineup for today. And we're going to start with Vince from Uplisting. Take it away, Vince.
Hi folks, I'm Vince, one of the founders of Uplisting. For those of you who don't know Uplisting, we are an Airbnb preferred software, preferred property and channel manager, and we're built specifically for growing short-term rental businesses. We're also one of the few solutions to offer Google Vacation Rentals integration. Our goal is to help you confidently grow your short-term rental business and to help you maximize how much you earn. We've got members all over the world ranging in size from 5 to 500 properties. And thank you so much for having me as part of this call.
Well, thank you very much, Vince. Next, we've got Amy.
Thanks, Paul. Hey, everyone. I'm Amy. I'm the founder and CEO of Folio. We are a platform used by property managers to create digital guidebooks in the form of mini apps to share information and local recommendations with their guests. We're supporting hundreds of properties across North America and have started to expand into some properties in France as well. And looking forward to chatting with you guys today.
Thank you very much, Amy. And next up, we have Kate.
Good morning, everybody. Kate Birtch with Property Protect. We offer on-demand fractional insurance for the short-term rental industry. We have a couple of different damage policies that property managers can sync their booking calendars to our system and automatically issue policies for any sort of guest damage during their stays. We're based in the US and primarily can write insurance in the US, but soon to be writing overseas. Feel free to reach out if you've got any sort of insurance related questions after.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kate. And last but no means least, we've got Shane from Cloudbeds.
Thanks so much, Paul. So my name's Shane, Director of Product Marketing at Cloudbeds. Cloudbeds, if you don't know, is a unified hospitality management platform. So we offer an all-in-one platform connecting your property management system, channel manager, booking engine, website, payments, in addition to digital marketing services, and most recently guest engagement solutions. So we have thousands of properties worldwide. We started in San Diego about 12 years ago, and really looking forward to being a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shane, and of course to all of our panelists present today. So just to add a little bit of context first before we get stuck into the meat of today's discussion, we look at how Shane's company Cloudbeds raised $150 million in Series D funding in November, and also recently acquired guest engagement solution Whistle to solve friction in the guest journey. We featured Vince and Uplisting a number of times on short-term rentals for a spotlight feature, your 300K investment in March, and also partnerships with a range of short-term rental service providers. And finally, we've also seen some of the issues being faced by property managers around the world, Avantstay and Wanderjaunt laying off staff and even ceasing operations. So we'll be coming on to some things related to those issues we've seen, whilst managers and owners are also having to adapt to Airbnb's enforced party ban worldwide. So let's kick off today's discussion and actually analyze the specific types of common pain points that property managers are experiencing. So we'll kick off with you, Amy. Folio is this self-service platform that's used by short-term rental owners and managers, and I believe you also create these interactive guest apps as well. Can you tell us the sort of activities that are consuming much of property managers' time at the moment?
Yeah. So property managers have spent a lot of time messaging with guests and answering guest questions, or they spend a lot of money outsourcing this task. So I recently spoke with a property manager who spends close to $6,000 a month outsourcing his team to the Philippines. There's a team of 5 there, and all they do all day long is just answer guest questions. And I think, this is partly related to, or I guess partly, I guess you could call it a silver lining of the pandemic, because as guests started traveling more, they're preferring short-term rentals over hotels. And a lot of these guests are first-time short-term rental guests. So they're not really sure what to expect. There's not a ton of consistency across different short-term rentals. So as a result, property managers are increasingly spending a lot more time catering to guests' questions.
So you believe that the pandemic has actually accentuated some of these pain points, would you say?
Yeah, I think the typical profile of a guest has changed, right? So you're seeing a huge increase in remote workers and digital nomads. They might stay for a week instead of like 3 or 4 days. So they're much more interested in, oh, I want more things to do in the area because they're there for longer. And so property managers are still adjusting to this new profile after navigating a very difficult past 2 years.
And, why do you think some of these pain points are particularly still prevalent now? What would you put that down to?
Yeah, so I think one of the causes is kind of a lack of consistency across different short-term rental properties. And that's just the nature of the business, right? So the range of different hotels, you kind of know what you're expecting. You check in at a desk, you pick up a key, the sheets are already on the bed, etc. But when you check into a short-term rental, the options are much wider. And so when guests are confused and they don't know where to find information, they tend to start messaging you on various platforms or texting you and your support team and asking questions.
Thank you very much for that, Amy. And Shane, as you talk about this hospitality management platform, and you're putting the emphasis on powering reservations and guest satisfaction at the same time. What, and I know you also work across a number of these lodging verticals.
Mm-hmm.
You look at independent hotels, hotel groups, vacation rentals as well.
Yeah.
What sort of pain points are you seeing property managers experiencing? Does that tally with what Amy's saying there?
It does. It really does. So I think there's three key areas, and one of them that Amy pointed out was sort of as you look at short-term rentals and that vertical, as we see at Cloudbeds, there really are a variety of technologies that are changing and coming into the space, right? And so you have a wide variety of implementations there. You have a wide swath of different adoption rates and expectations, and I think that changes. Per type of guest. It changes by region, but I think that influx of technology is still being molded a little bit about how do you actually bring that all to bear and how do you implement that for your guests. I think one thing we also see, and this is for both the short-term rental market and others, is still labor shortage, right? So if outside of just being a proprietor, owner, operator, or you're running a property management team, labor shortages hit everything across the hospitality sector since the pandemic. In fact, Bloomberg put out a report, 1 in 3 hospitality workers left during the pandemic and aren't coming back. And so we're going to continue to see that labor shortage, which in turn kind of feeds into the need for that technology and the need to create more efficiencies and more more streamlined expectations for guests to help offset some of those things. I think guests are changing. Amy hit on it, and I'll hit on it a little later. The expectations and the experiences and the engagement the guests want pre-pandemic to post-pandemic has changed. People want different things. They expect different things. And I think changing with that and trying to keep up with that is difficult, and trying to understand what those things are. And then you also see the convergence of lodging sectors, right? You see the Marriotts of the world getting into short-term rentals and a quarter doing the same thing. And I think there's an opportunity there for property managers and short-term rentals to be more flexible and more adaptive and to meet those guest expectations a lot quicker than maybe some of these larger firms who are trying to get into the space because they're chasing the tailwinds of where guests are going.
And you talk there about, I think a lot of these issues talk about labor shortage and guest expectations, convergence. I imagine that they're probably going to be mirrored across quite a few of our panelists today. Have these issues been fully addressed yet? Do you think they're going to go away anytime soon? How do you view it from your perspective?
From my perspective, I think we're still very much at the beginning of the new normal. And with things are getting back, I just recently went to Spain and stayed at a short-term rental for a while. And, my expectation from what I've done in the States during COVID and in Spain, drastically different. The way you communicate is very different between messaging services, keyless entry in some places, or sort of picking up a key at a local coffee shop, right? There are all these different ways. And I think adjusting to the new normal is going to be important. I think labor shortage will continue to be an issue. I know we definitely have that issue in the US, but that's something we're going to have to continue to address. And that's where, when we talk about technology, we talk about all the panelists and the what they provide to property managers and short-term rentals. That's where we're going to continue to invest and see this technology become more of an opportunity to drive efficiency and guest satisfaction over the course of the coming years.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Shane. And Vince, you offer a slightly different perspective, I guess, to our other panelists as this all-in-one property management system. We've already said that you raised 300K back in March as well, which I'm sure we will touch on in this discussion. But from the conversations that you're presumably having with property managers, what do you think are the most common notable pain points that they're observing?
I can mirror what Amy and Shane said there. Guest expectations. Airbnb, 30% of bookings are now 30 nights or longer. Like, that's an insane number for me. I didn't, when they told me that, we have a call recently with our account manager, and we went through these slides. It's like, okay, that's very interesting. It's a whole different demographic, a whole different sector to and as Amy mentioned, it's all about comfort and workstations, and you're staying there for an extended period of time. There's more competition too, so there's a lot of people entering into the market. You really need to stand out, be unique, know who your target guests are. We have a lot of service accommodation members in the UK. You know, they're exclusively or more or less exclusively focused on business customers. So all they do is focus on that business, kind of like a Sonder type operation. Just know who your target guests are. Other pain points that we have we've kind of gone through a process where we grow with our members. So we started off with members who might have had 5 properties, and over the past few years they've grown to 200 plus. And as they mature and as the industry matures, I think we're seeing it across the board. You know, really common challenges are managing clients, so owner statements, accounting, huge pain point. It takes people up, a week to manage their invoices and accounting at the end of a month. So it's really, that's a huge point that we're kind of focused on or looking at the moment.
And how do you believe that Uplisting is providing a solution to these pain points that managers and owners are experiencing?
So the other, we try to automate as much as possible. So our goal is to put your business on autopilot. So if you're looking at from an operational perspective, common pain points are, screening guests, verifying who they are, collecting a deposit, signing a rental agreement, automated guest messaging so that you're, and really kind of flexible messaging so that you're messaging the guests with the right information. So we have, for example, pre-arrival automation is what we call it, which is the group of all of those, a lot of those tasks. So we have automated guest messages, we have built-in e-sign rental agreements that's fully customizable per property, really flexible, guest identification through like Airbnb do, so with an ID and verify that guest is who they say they are. We also do security deposit collection automatically through Uplisting, and we're one of the few that are allowed to take an offline deposit on Airbnb. We're currently working on accounting, as I said, so there's a lot of complication around the different channels and how they provide the booking data line items. So we do a lot of work to try and parse that out into an easy to understand way that will be used in owner statements and accounting, like uploading to Xero and QuickBooks and things like that.
And you've heard from our first 2 panelists as well. Are there, and again, you've pointed out some of the similar pain points. Are there any reasons why they haven't been eliminated so far, or what do you see for the route ahead?
Reasons, I think the short-term rental industry has just gone through a huge boom. Obviously, through COVID started, and then after that, we've seen a huge growth across the board. There's just so much going on. There's consolidation in the market. There's like lodging sectors blurring. Every property manager or a property owner has different expectations and requirements. It's very, very difficult to build a solution that solves a problem for everybody. Nobody has done that at all. And we really focus on, that's why we kind of focus on the growing property manager and try and solve their needs. We can't solve all the needs of one property owner, for example. And not everybody uses tech to help. So there are loads of solutions out there that can really help you manage your business. But there's still a lot of people using spreadsheets and Google Calendar.
Thank you very much, Vince. And we'll turn to Kate as well, because you're working across, we've heard about Property Protect already, Bigfoot Insurance, and I think there's a couple of policies and different provisions that we can discuss later as well. But what are the main challenges that you're noticing property managers experiencing in your business?
I would echo what the other panelists have mentioned. I think that property managers are pulled in so many directions, and they have to maintain separate tones for their guests, for their owners, for other vendors, and unlike a hotel with a lot of resources, they usually have a much smaller staff. In addition to that, they're also operating multiple software platforms, and some of those don't talk to each other. So, they're really in a pickle with trying to connect and automate as much as possible. And I think, the more automation and the more open APIs that are available across software platforms, it will help to make their job a lot easier. I think that a lot of STR vendors are starting to offer, connectors and integrations a little bit more fluidly, and that's really going to help them, because like everybody has mentioned, they're having to try to, align their accounting, their housekeeping, their vendors, their guest supplies, their guest communication, owner communication. And it's just builds up a lot. And I'm a host myself, so I can relate to their pain and understand, exactly where they're at when they're talking to us about, damage that they have to turn around and fix right before the next guest checks in a couple hours.
I mean, it's probably all the more apt as well, where we've had the Airbnb announcement of the global party ban being enforced now. And I know you work in damage and theft insurance, but how do you think there can be satisfactory solutions that can satisfy guests, vendors, property managers, all of these alike?
I think setting expectations up front, and putting in your listing, this is not the same as a hotel. And we have a lot different operating procedures helps. When I was in Mexico just this last weekend, we stayed at a short-term rental, and it was one of the best I've stayed at so far. It was very clear what the stay was and what it was not. And so I think property managers could definitely up their game a little bit if they just kind of overly communicate. And I also think that, along the way, lean on vendors to ask, what other resources that do they have available? What other, recommendations that they could have to help to work with guest communications?
Are there any specific maybe reasons why you think property managers are facing lots of issues now with communications and managing all that? Is it like labor shortages, or is it tech adoption? How do you perceive that?
I think a lot are scaling really quickly without having the right processes in place. And I think that processes are going to be your make or break. And if you don't have the right processes and people on the ground, you're really going to run into trouble when you start to manage, 5, 10, 20, 100 properties. You really have to focus on that as kind of your core system operation. And then from there, figure out how to scale.
Yeah, I think Vince, in our pre-call, I think you mentioned something about that. Would you sort of like to comment on Kate's point?
Well, I think if I'm looking at our members, looking at our members who have operations in place, they really focus on operations and, having somebody in the operational role. I think what Kate said is just bang on. You really need to have your team in place before you start scaling, and then that just frees up your time to focus on growth and be able to grow your business sustainably.
Fantastic. And Amy, if we look at the short-term rental industry, and I know you've already touched a little bit on this changing short-term rental guest profile, we can delve into that a little bit more as well. But do you think this industry, and we've heard about other lodging sectors as well, does it have the technology to solve these pain points right now?
Yes, I think there is a lot of there's a lot of software available to short-term rental property managers. As Kate mentioned, they don't always communicate with each other, and oftentimes it's not totally clear what's available to the market. Our platform allows hosts to create these digital guidebooks. And as Kate also mentioned, a lot of guests prefer receiving information, or hosts need to kind of over communicate this information. And so when you have something like Folio, where you can create a digital guidebook and you can send it to them at multiple points throughout their journey, right? So you book a property, it's included in their confirmation email. You get the check-in message, it's included again. And that way guests can automatically access the information like checkout instructions, Wi-Fi password, where to do the laundry, how to work the coffee maker, and it's just all at their fingertips. So yeah, I think there's a lot that the industry has to offer for property managers.
And I know something else we mentioned was this sort of notion of high tech, high touch as well. And with your digital guidebooks, is that something that rings true for you at Folio?
Yes, absolutely. There's a great quote in the New York Times a couple of months ago by a Cornell professor, and he said, high tech is the new high touch. And so this is kind of another result of the pandemic, where before, you wanted to maybe walk into a hotel lobby, be greeted by someone, go sit at a concierge desk. And that's really not the case anymore, right? Everyone's preferring self check-in, keyless entry, like you don't want to interact with humans as much. So you're seeing all of these technologies pop up that can help automate different parts of the business, as Vince said, right? The goal of these technology providers is to help property managers automate as much as they can.
And with your work at Folio as well, how are you in what I imagine is probably quite a fragmented and competitive space? How do you stand out amongst other providers? There's other companies, of course, who do digital guidebooks, but how are you standing out in that field?
Yeah, so the way we designed our guidebooks is with the traveler in mind, right? So we spent a lot of time on UX, doing user research with the traveler. So how do travelers like to receive information? What format is most digestible to them? Because what you don't want is to, spend all of this time creating guest information and then to send it to your guests and they don't like how it looks, right? So a lot of times when property managers come to us, they'll have like PDF documents and they're like, oh no, we already have something digital that we send to guests. But if you imagine the user experience, they're on their little phones, they're like pinching in different pages of the PDF, and that's not, they're not going to read the information that you communicate to them. So, in an effort to kind of bridge the two sides of a host and a guest, and just make sure that they're communicating effectively, that is the goal of our platform.
Thank you very much for that, Amy. And Kate, from more of an insurance lens and looking at the coverage that can be provided for your business as well, but how do you think service providers need to or can keep property managers top of their minds when they're providing this coverage?
I think insurance is a little different animal. There aren't very many insurance vendors out there. Short-term rentals are considered a very high risk in the world of insurance. And, with a revolving door of guests, it's a lot riskier than, one static occupant over the course of a year. We have adjusted our strategy to kind of accommodate what Airbnb's trends are. So we've also noticed that there's longer stays. We're seeing more like 2 week, 1 month, 3 month stays. But I think in terms of insurance vendors and offering, services and policies to property managers, really just having that open line of communication and being, the customer service advocate that they need, especially in a time where, they've got high turnover, it's a busy season, they're doing same day turns, they've got damage, they need to have some sort of answer, or at least peace of mind to know that their vendor is going to be there and support them. And so we really try to pride ourselves on, having online chat available. We've got, customer service reps that are readily, there to answer any questions, because it is a little tricky to navigate an insurance claim. And it's also an emotional time for property managers as well.
As well. How has the kind of flexibility that we're now seeing in stays, how has that actually affected, the coverage that's being given out now?
It hasn't affected us too much because we design our policies for up to 30 days. We do offer some that are from 30 to 180 days. But for primary homeowners policies, a lot of property managers just want to make sure that they check in with their owners to make sure that they have their, primary policy sorted and it's the correct, adequate coverage that, they're supposed to have. A lot of folks don't understand that a regular homeowners policy doesn't actually cover short-term rental stays. And so there's a lot of discrepancy there where we have to do education on, what the named insured on the policy is versus, a short-term rental wrapper on a policy. So I think, just being that resource and offering that type of education up front just helps to make the property management job a lot easier, especially with conveying that information to the owners.
Of course, and that ties in fantastically with the next question. Really, do these service companies, do you think they actually, how important is it for them to have experience in the short-term rental industry if we compare it with other lodging sectors, maybe more traditional like hotels, so that they can provide this reliable customer service that you describe?
How important it is for the vendors to have?
Yes, for them to have that experience in the short-term rental industry specifically.
Yeah, I think it's critically important. You know, I've come across quite a few vendors that have never stayed in a short-term rental themselves, and that boggles my mind. So for us, you know, we're travelers, we have remote offices, we constantly stay in short-term rentals. We understand the dynamics when we come into a place and, you know, see the housekeepers and see the supplies and know kind of what's a well-operated rental and what is not. And if they have not had experience with short-term rentals, I would encourage them to go out and go travel and stay in some right away. But I would get very familiar with kind of the ins and outs of, you know, how they're operated. Talk to the property managers, you know, when they're booking and or when they're setting up a partnership agreement, and really try to understand from their eyes and their hats, you know, what their pain points are.
And that goes back actually to Amy's point. I don't know if you got to mention that on the previous point about the Deloitte survey.
Yes, Deloitte did a survey, I think at the end of 2021, and over or almost half of the people who stayed at short-term rentals during the pandemic were first-time short-term rental guests. So you're seeing this huge shift in people who really, you know, guests who really don't know what to expect. They don't really understand the rules. They don't understand the different policies. They're not used to reading a lot, you know, when they're not used to getting all of this information from property managers when they check in somewhere. But most of them have a positive experience. And I think the follow-up question to that, the follow-up question for the survey was, you know, would you stay at a short-term rental again? And 3/4 said that they would for 50% of their vacations going forward. So you're seeing, you know, a lot more demand coming into this industry. And as several of the other panelists have mentioned, you're also kind of seeing this either merging or lines blurring between different lodging types.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Kate, as well before that. I'd be interested to see what the demographics are with that when new first time travellers in short-term rentals. And Vince, this probably ties in quite well with you as well about, you know, how do you think the short-term rental industry is actually set up to cater to particular demographics, whether that's what we associate more maybe with millennials or Gen Z, and creating this excellent brand experience compared to other hospitality segments?
Well, I think there's a lot to do. There's so much potential and opportunity there, I think. Like thinking about myself, I have 2 young kids. If you're thinking about what the SDR industry can provide that traditional hospitality can't, so like family friendly, for example, and like whenever I search for a short-term rental property, I'm looking for somewhere with like a nice kitchen, outdoor space, a number of bedrooms, good quality furniture. It's just not enjoyable staying in a hotel with a family. So there's a whole niche that really isn't. I haven't seen any brands that are really focused on that, or at least have made a big dent. So that's something that's the one niche that the short-term rental industry can definitely take advantage of. Then millennial Instagrammable niche. So we have Wander, obviously, but thinking about unique spaces, experiences, all of those things that traditional hospitality maybe cannot provide, or at least is not as unique and personal.
And what would, if you had like 1 or 2 bits of advice, what do you think is the key for vendors like we've got on the panel, or for other people tuning in, to actually be able to provide peace of mind for property managers, particularly in a time like this?
I would say if you build, starting a product like one of our products or one of our software products, I would be focused on solving one problem very well. I think we've seen a few, examples of products trying to scale too quickly. You cannot shortcut on quality. I think the question you asked about if it's important to have experience in the short-term rental industry. I think it's equally as important to have experience building a quality software product, because it can go very wrong. And if you're talking about a property management solution, a channel manager like Uplisting or like Cloudbeds, where if you have one problem with a sink and Airbnb is not blocked out, and you have a double booking that you need to cancel, you lose your superhost tag. There's so many things that can go wrong that reliability has to be first and foremost. It's not about providing all solutions to all customers, because it's just impossible.
Thank you for that, Vince. And Shane, I mean, coming on to you as well with Cloudbeds. We said already that you work across multiple lodging businesses, so lodging verticals. So you can perhaps offer quite a unique insight into this from your perspective. But do you think the short-term rental industry can offer these solutions that are being talked about? Are independently operated brands, for example, better prepared to react quicker to changing market conditions than bigger brands?
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think they can. I think one of the things that we see a lot as we focus, as we're working across different lodging business verticals, but it all comes back at the end of the day to guest satisfaction and guest kind of engagement. And something that Amy and you were talking about, which is high tech equals high touch. I kind of pivot that a little bit to personalization, right? And what we're talking about in sort of the folio creation, or sort of that security and peace of mind. I think that's something that the short-term rental industry can offer and provide. That personalization is really key. I was reading a report the other day from Folio that the pandemic actually accelerated consumer digital personalization by 6.5 years, meaning people in 2020 now are at 2026 in terms of their expectation of personalization. And this isn't just the digital assets, the digital things that they come in contact as part of that check-in and that engagement, but it's also things like keyless entry or kind of pre-arrival messaging or post-stay follow-ups. Those things are really, really key. And what you see, I'll take my time at booking.com, where we worked with a lot of the big chains, where it took years to derive any solutions or any sort of opportunities to create further engagement, because they had intricate interwoven systems that were bespokely built for them, that it was really hard to change. From a technology standpoint, it's really hard to adapt. If you look at the short-term rental industry, where 85% of the owner operators are small and mom and pop, where you have the opportunity to implement new technologies or try things to cater specifically to guest engagement, to Vince's point, picking who your guest is, understanding the market, and being able to focus on doing that really well and finding the solution or solutions that work really well for you, you're able to pivot. And I think there, in your previous question to me, where are we at? Being in the new normal, you're seeing these technologies come in, and it's really important you understand what your needs are, right? For property management systems, channel managers, websites, booking engines, digital marketing, whatever the whole array is, finding those solutions that work for you, that work for your guests, and can really create that guest satisfaction. And that's key. And I think they can hone in on that. I think Vince's point about a family niche is fantastic. That's a great area to say, we're going to do this. How do we make sure that we satisfy those people and bring them back with what we can offer them? And I think that flexibility is there because of the size, as well as the prevalence of technology to be able to help you cater to that.
And we talked a little bit about how that consistency and reliability. So how does that, what you talked about just there, how does that feed into that? And when we say consistency and reliability, is this across sort of tech adoption? Is it across, smart locks? Is it across hospitality, everything?
Yeah, I think, we're at the end of the day, we're all consumers, right? Take Apple, for example, has nothing to do with hospitality, but there's consistency and reliability, right? And if you look at what the expectations are, I think it's important that you not only provide consistent experiences to potential guests, that you provide consistency in the way that you're presenting yourself in market, right? So kind of who you are, who you cater to, and how you want to be seen in market. So that digital marketing footprint of what's really important to you and who you want to be is important. And then the technology piece is important. I think one of the things we look at Cloudbeds is, we're a unified platform. So everything sits within one technology stack. All the data, whether it be payments, booking engine, websites, all flows through a centralized piece. So you don't have to connect multiple solutions. One of the things that we see a lot is, as I said, 85% of people being small operators or mom and pop. We're not coders. I'm not a coder, right? You didn't get into the business to try to figure out how to connect APIs. And there are solutions out there that will help you get started quickly, onboard quickly, and drive efficiency. But also, if you want to grow, if you're in the property management space where you're trying to connect those technologies, working with vendors who understand how to grow with you and how to open up, not only the platform to grow with you, but open up access to other things in a marketplace or variety of technologies that allow you to build your bespoke point of excellence for your experience. That's really key. And so I think one of the things we look at is not having to build this sort of Frankenstein of technologies to get started, but start with your crucial areas and find people that will grow with you and have the open technology to be able to adapt and implement as your business changes and your guest needs change.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Shane. Just a reminder to our audience as well, please do post any questions you have in the chat as well, and our panelists will be very happy to answer those. Amy, we'll turn back to you as well on the subject of technology and making sure that you're picking the right and specific types of technology that are right for your business. So, what sort of technology or innovations are you bringing to Folio to provide this peace of mind?
Yeah. So, I think the first question is, property managers should ask themselves is, what are they spending the most time doing, right? So a lot of the property managers we work with, maybe they have like a very luxury type of property or a very large property. So they'll often have bookings with 6, 10, 12 guests, and they tend to spend a lot of time answering guest questions, because as the number of guests increase per reservation, right, like you're just getting pings from a lot of different people. So that's kind of where our strength lies. So digital guidebooks in general, we save property managers both time and money, and they're able to scale their property portfolios without scaling their operations teams. And so, as an example, one of our property managers has eliminated virtually all non-emergency guest questions, right? So they just have stopped hearing from their guests unless it's like the toilets broke. And so I think it's just about finding technologies that really fit your pain points. So if you are having a lot of, things that are broken, like maybe it's strengthening your insurance, or if you're listing on 16 different platforms, right, like go for a channel manager. And so just really understanding like where you're spending most of your time and picking technologies to support that.
Thank you very much, Amy. With some irony, I believe we might be having a few issues with our communications in the background. So if anyone isn't able to get their question across, we have got all of our panelists' emails up if you want to contact them afterwards. Hopefully we'll be able to get that sorted before the end of the session, but thank you very much for that, Amy. And Shane, we talked about in the context of this discussion as well about your acquisition of Whistle. It's very exciting. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what we can expect for the future of contactless, frictionless tech? Sure.
Yeah, no, and thank you. We just announced the Whistle acquisition at High Tech, so we're really excited to bring them into the Cloudbeds family. One of the things that we started as a PMS in 2012 and subsequently started to build out other technologies into the platform. One thing that was really missing and that Whistle's done really well and is around that whole guest engagement piece, from post booking to post stay. And you know, we talk a lot about more reservations, happier guests. That's our strap line. More reservations comes from direct bookings and comes from the technology, but happier guests comes from the efficiencies and the engagement of the efficiencies in the process and engagement with those guests. And one thing from Whistle, you know, we looked and said, what are some of the pain points that exist after somebody books, before they stay, and how can we help bring this into a seamless sort of process and experience? I think Kate mentioned, you know, without having process in place, you see a lot more inefficiencies. So how do you bring these process into place? And with Whistle, we saw, you know, the ability to bring in increased guest satisfaction by being able to communicate with guests, you know, during their you know, post-booking and pre-stay. Being able to drive incremental revenue through upsells and additional services. And this is becoming an even more important thing as you look at Airbnb's been in the experiences space for some time now. How do you provide that additional personalization and experiences before they stay and communicate with them? And then streamlining those internal operations, right? And making sure that those messaging services, those operations are in a place where you already work. So one thing we talk about on the tech side is you don't want to pull people out of the systems they already use to go do something else, right? You only have so much staff that probably turns over, or you're short on labor, and you don't want to learn new things. So how do you pull systems into where people are already doing their day-to-day business and help bring more efficiency in their operations there? We saw that with Whistle. It's an opportunity to bring guest engagement into the platform, to have a unified inbox for Airbnb, Booking.com, and all of your other guest messaging services from within your PMS, having that live chat functionality within your booking engine, right? And those integration points, which just create a better guest engagement point from the time of booking all the way through post-stay. So they can always be in contact, but you can also provide that conversation engagement to them as they're preparing for their arrival. So we're excited to do that.
Thank you. And is that acquisition like a part of the sustained strategy for what you're wanting to do moving forward, given the funding round we also mentioned before?
Yeah, so well, you know, I think we announced about 2 months ago Amplify, which is our digital marketing solution to help people have more visibility, lodging businesses have more visibility on Google and sort of all the digital footprint, so to bring more direct bookings. You'll see with Whistle, it's about guest engagement. And so this whole piece is kind of connecting those dots from the customer journey pieces, helping lodging businesses from the point where people are in discovery mode. I want to go somewhere, I want to do something, and making sure that you're there to the point that you book through the website and the booking engine, and the point between the booking and the stay to have that engagement point and that conversation, and then all the way post-stay. So what we're really focused on is that entire guest journey from discovery to post-stay, and helping create a unified solution for every lodging business to be able to drive efficiency and increase revenue there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Shane. And, Kate, you've heard from our other panelists as well. From your own angle, what are the emerging technologies or innovations that you see really alleviating the pain points, the common pain points we've been discussing?
Yeah, I think just to echo what everyone else is saying, you know, the communication, you know, chat factor is definitely a highlight. I think calendar sharing as well, so you can kind of cross sync across different platforms that you're working with. You know, I think if there's a way to kind of even loop in chat for your cleaners, your vendors, all housed in a single app, that's a big opportunity there. And then automations, you know, to what Shane was mentioning on the pre-stay type of communication and post-stay communication, and even, you know, recruiting some of those post-stay guests for future travel. I think, you know, a lot of folks are trying to figure out the direct booking, you know, solution to be able to capitalize more on, you know, more income and revenue from the stays versus paying out those service fees. And so figuring out how you can incorporate all the functions that you need, you know, with the calendaring and the chat and the accounting features and functions, and housing that into one solution, or connecting enough solutions together so you only have to really work within one hub, but you've got all those functions available. I think just across the board, a lot of the STR software companies and apps, you know, there isn't a one size fits all. I know everybody's trying to kind of climb to the top to be that for folks, but there's, like everybody has mentioned, you know, there's the weekend short-term rental operator, there's the professional short-term rental operator, there are, you know, the arbitrageurs, there's the co-host, there's the owner operator. I mean, there's so many different variations. So really trying to, vendors can do well with really targeting who their host or their property manager is, and showing all of the features and functions that they're offered to them in an easy, digestible way. So, you know, if you're not going to buy into a software or an app that has all these extra, you know, bells and whistles, but you're not going to leverage them. So I think that property managers, you know, just take a little bit of time to find out what the right solution is, and then make sure that you're able to connect and adapt all of your needs and wants to make sure that you're not spending money on services or vendors that you're not actually going to leverage or utilize.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Kate. And it sort of links into something we were talking about, Vince, as well. You were talking about how sort of tech should be designed to create this loyal community of members. How do you think this tech, how do you think that tech would work necessarily?
Like if you're referring to like we have a really strong community in Uplisting.
Yes.
I think because there's so many, it's a very busy market. There's a lot of competition, especially what we're doing with Uplisting. So anywhere that we can provide more value, we try, and we try to listen very closely to our members. I mentioned that we're focused on growing property managers. So we have a community of, you know, growing property managers that are going through similar challenges. They might be at one part, you know, in an early part of their journey or a later stage, whatever it is. Community is really interesting and really helpful. So there's benefits. There's so many benefits in terms of listening to feedback, getting real candid and, you know, advice on what we should be doing. We've used our community to offer investment to our members. So you mentioned that we raised about $500,000, not quite as much as Cloudbeds recently, but a significant amount for us. 300 of that came through, or 200 of that came through our own members, and that came through our community. So, you know, as our members are seeing us release new features or ask about feedback on potential features that we're going to build. So if you look at our community, you'll see all of these like mock-ups and designs and ideas and questions around, this is helpful, is that helpful, whatever it is. So we have managed to get our members to invest money into Uplisting. There's so many mechanisms to do it now. It's not actually that hard. So we did it through an angel list roll-up vehicle and a safe investment model. So it was, you know, turned around a couple of weeks. It's very easy to do. And I think as for B2B software companies, it's a really interesting way to run a business without going out and raising a lot of VC money. It's very different challenges. Cloudbeds have quite different challenges than we have at Uplisting because we don't need to be the size of Cloudbeds necessarily. So it's you know, it's what you want to do with it.
And note how you've grown it organically up to this point as well. So, yeah, you know, from your perspective, again, what technology should property managers be looking at if they're going for more of an integrated management approach?
Yeah, I think as everybody said, it's quite hard to find a one solution fits all. So at Uplisting, you know, you should look at a property and channel manager. That probably will be the focal point of your kind of software stack. So looking at automation, reliability, how much can they automate? They won't be able to automate everything, but you know, can they, as Kate said, what are your main, or Amy or Kate, whatever your main, what you're spending a lot of time doing, focus on, you know, finding that solution in your software. We have a direct booking website, for example, which click and play. We're going to process over $30 million of direct bookings for our members this year through that website, keeping it really simple. As you're, you know, there's the high staff turnaround. You really need a platform that's simple to use and will be simple to use for training new members of staff. You know, it's very easy to get to overly complicate and overly engineer software products. So, you know, something that's really easy to use up front is going to be best for you in the long term, I would say. Another, you know, really quick win, I think, is dynamic software. So dynamic pricing software, sorry. So Price Labs, Wheelhouse, Beyond Pricing, whatever it is. It's just anecdotally talking to members and seeing how much the revenue jumped just by having some smart dynamic pricing is, I think, something everybody should be looking at. Cleaning management, again, you know, really help schedule cleaning, chat to cleaners if you need. We have a built-in solution, but a lot of our members also use Turnover B&B. Obviously a guidebook like Folio, and insurance is becoming real. We're getting a lot of questions around insurance recently, especially new people coming into the industry and not really knowing what they should be doing. And it's so complicated. There are so many different, globally, if you're looking globally, there's so many different challenges. That Property Protect, for example, is as an insurance provider that you should be considering.
I'll come to Piers' question in a minute, just because it's very useful. I think we can conclude the webinar at that point. But speaking of insurance, Kate, are there, and Vince touched on it very nicely, led it into your company. What do you think apps and software companies can be doing to help property managers streamline operations, functions? How do you see that?
Well, we are big fans of property managers that use NoiseAware, and not to plug them shamelessly, but it helps kind of set the expectation from the property manager to the guest that there is a no party zone. It's nice to celebrate and go on vacation and have these holidays, but there's still a respect level of taking care of the property that they're responsible for. I also think a lot of guidebooks like what Amy offers, and just having the house rules present, sometimes meeting the guest upon check-in is helpful, depending on certain locations as well. We see a lot of variety of claims that come through, or specifically around certain locations, like Las Vegas, Miami, places where there's a lot more partying and entertainment that takes place. But I think, just really letting guests know that this is a professional business. We take it seriously. We want you to enjoy yourself and have the best day ever. But we also want to maintain that, we have these levels of rules and expectations from you as well. So I think overly communicating, again, signage, guest books, guidebooks, all of those things would be really helpful. And, a lot of folks come to us after they've had a reactive event. So really kind of looking into the insurance side of things proactively versus after they've dealt with, a $5,000 damage claim and now out of pocket for that, and then searching for the insurance. So.
Thank you, Kate. And that brings us nicely probably to the last question we can fit in, but it concerns the one USP hotels have over short-term rentals is what happens inside the communal areas of the property with their guests. How can short-term rentals compete with this? Is there someone who wants to come in on that point before we finish?
I think that's a huge opportunity. I think it totally right. That's not really been solved yet. And who can solve that problem will go far. But if I'm looking at some of our members there's this blurring of lodging, I think, as Shane mentioned, there's a lot of different hotels, whatever it is, on short-term rentals. But a few of our members that we've seen are converting motels into short-term rentals. And with that, you have this central communal area, but you're running it as an Airbnb. There's certain benefits. There's like self-check-in. There's no need for somebody at reception, for example, necessarily. But you can build things like a communal pool or interesting amenities around that. And there's so much potential there that I think that we will see a solution to that in the future.
Anyone else want to add anything before we finish there?
I agree. We stayed at a tiny home compound up in Sedona, Arizona, and it was phenomenal. They had iPads and touchscreens everywhere. So even though there were not staff on site, it was very interactive and fun, and gave guests something to do and even interact with other guests. So I think other technology opportunities would be, if you can't afford the on-the-ground staff, figure out how you could still offer some sort of engagement tech-wise to the guests.
Excellent. Well, a big thank you to all of our contributors today, to Vince, to Amy, to Kate, and to Shane. I've just got a couple of very quick slides to run through before we finish. So we are back next Tuesday for the last webinar that we're running on short-term rentals before a summer break. It's called Realtors Are Uniquely Positioned to Disrupt the STR Space, sponsored by Jetstream. It's a slightly different topic for us, slight departure from our usual topics, but we hope you can join us then. by signing up in the chat or by scanning the QR code on the screen. For sponsorship opportunities, please do contact my colleague Katie. A big thank you again to Flywire and Noise Aware for sponsoring our Rockstars series and session. We're going to keep the session open for another 2 minutes as well if you want to jot down any details in the chat or connect further with our speakers. Do contact us via our various channels. And finally, a big thank you once again to our speakers and to everyone who's tuned into the session today. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much, everyone.